She's a trailblazing woman in the engineering space with over 3 decades of experience. And now she sits at the helm of the Engineers Board of Kenya. This week, we speak to engineer Margaret Ogai. This is She Means Business. I am your host, Claire Munde. Hi, Margaret.
Hi.
Welcome to She Means Business.
Okay, thank you.
So today we just want to have a conversation around the engineering field, the strides that have been made, and more specifically women in engineering. So you have been in the field for over 30 years.
Yes.
You're a civil engineer and you have won a number of awards, been in the industry for a while. So before we get to the women in engineering, I'd like to hear your own journey. What has it been like from university to all the years that you've been practicing? Give us some highlights of your career.
Thank you. I graduated from the University of Nairobi in 1990, the civil engineering, and I then started working in the private sector. For 10 years I was there. At the time I left the university, there was also an economic downturn in the country. So getting my own career development was fairly slow. I had to change jobs 3 times just to get the right experience to become a professional engineer. For some reason, it was very important to me to become a professional engineer. And I think it then opened for me different opportunities. And I moved to the public sector. I moved to Kenya Rules Board, where I worked for 19 years. And the reason I made that shift from private to public was I wanted to understand, how do we make decisions about infrastructure? How are they made? What makes us decide this is the budget we're going to go for, this is the road we're going to build. So that's why I was there. And I enjoyed it because it was more now of a regulatory environment where you're overseeing others as they do the designs and as was just allocating the budgets for the road maintenance. So it's more policy and regulation level. And after that, I joined the Engineers Board of Kenya as the CEO and registrar. And I have been here now for 4.5 years. It's been an exciting journey because we're trying to strengthen engineering and engineers so that we can serve better in terms of the delivery of infrastructure programs and manufacturing. And so that's where I've been. And I think I can say, in terms of my career, I initially did not have mentors, let me say that, or even role models that you, in terms of engineering. Of course, you have role models in life, and I do have. I think the late Wangari Maathai was really a role model to me. But that was more on the civic space and the way she was able to come up and support environment issues. But later on, I think I joined I was a founder member of something we call the Women Engineers Chapter at the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. And I think from there, I started linking up, especially the younger women engineers, encouraging them. And it has been very exciting to me to see a number who've come through and are now doing great things in engineering. I think it's really nice when you see the success of women engineers in a space that has been fairly restricted to us. So I must say, I came to see the importance of mentorship and being a mentor. And it's something I enjoy and try to do when I can.
That's wonderful. And you said that when you were coming up, you had a role model in the civic space, but not necessarily in the engineering space. And there have been strides that have been made. But can you give us a picture of what the statistics show of women in engineering? And then we'll go from there, and what is causing that statistic to be rather low?
Yeah. Well, currently on our register, we have 28,000 engineers, which is a good investment as a country. But of that, only about 14% are women. Yeah. So you can see there's clearly a big gap. We should be at even minimum the 30% that is in the Constitution. So we have a lot to do. We are working a lot with stakeholders. And I must say, women, despite their fewer numbers, women engineers, they are doing fairly well in terms of at the civic leadership space at the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. I think through the same Women Engineers chapter, they got encouraged, they got mentors themselves, and we now have, I think, close to 40% of the leadership is women. One of the barriers for women is that, of course, you're not one in the leadership roles. We have very few who are director generals. In fact, I think I tried to recall, And they are very, very few. And I know, let me say in the road sector where I belong, I'm the only engineer CEO who is a woman. I have seen at level 2 now, we have them. That is the level just before the Director General. But it's just one in each institution. And there's need for us to actually have that voice of the women at the leadership, within the boardrooms, because there's a gender lens to infrastructure. When we're making choices of how we're going to, which road we're going to do as well, sometimes we need to look at what is it that, how we're going to ease the burden of the woman. If it is water supply, if it is energy, clean energy, because we talk, yes, we have a very good clean energy as a country. We are a leader there in clean renewable energy resources, but when you come down to the demand, women are still cooking with very unsafe cooking fuels. And I think because we don't have our voices there, so these choices are made that really still give us a social burden comes into our lives as women, and we are not able to excel. So that comes back to the barriers. Why do we have few women engineers? I think it's a STEM-related problem. It's across. Whether you're doing the others, I think they're science-based. Women have tended to be shy. And I think it has to do partly with stereotyping. We've been stereotyped, and we have taken that stereotype for a bit too long, that physics is hard, mathematics is hard. And truly, we think that women are generally as equal and as capable as the men. And so I think one of it has just been a cultural barrier that holds us back. And as I said, even when you look ahead and you can't see somebody who looks like yourself, you tend to also say, I might be better off in, I think, like medicine. It's a STEM-related course, but that one, I think we have seen the doctors, I think there's good parity there. That is one. Then I think the support systems. I must say, even when I was younger, you'd find that there's certain things that you think are your personal problem. You go to a site and there are no facilities for women. Unajikaza. Because how do you bring it up in a boardroom full of men? Yeah, so I find those are barriers, and it's because you're too few. So you also now find yourself pregnant, and there are also issues. You start asking yourself, okay, how do I travel? Where will I get my washroom facilities? At which point do I need to stop coming to site? Because also people are getting worried. People are also now starting to get worried about you. Then also women, when we start working, it's a time we're also now getting ready for marriage. So there are choices that women have to make, even where they'll work. So many of the women engineers I have seen, one, prefer to site work in Nairobi. The facilities for their children are here. So you find us to be less regional based than the men. We make that choice deliberately. So that cuts out for you a lot of opportunities. Many women then tend to be in the headquarters as compared to going and leading in construction projects out there. So you can't be seen. So how, if you're not being seen, how would you get promoted? Last barrier that I know, okay, there are many, but there's another one. Actually, when our young women engineers complain about two things. When they go to look for jobs, you know, there are more unemployed women engineers than they are the graduate counterpart, the male. And it's because they go to site, and one, they are meeting male-led companies who then are asking them, as we don't want people who will get pregnant here for us. I'm telling you, these are, let me just say the way it is. And then unfortunately, we also have a lot of sexual harassment. In a field that you're so few, I think that fine line of this power balance comes to play. And they have complained, and I know a number have come and told me they have had to quit jobs because of sexual harassment at work. We have tried to put structures. I know the IEK, we have been in discussion with the Women Engineers chapter to put up a gender desk. So we are discussing between ourselves and the Commission for Gender and Equality how we can come up with a gender desk, because this is a field that still remains largely dominated by the male. We are happy, we are good counterparts, and they are very good allies. Let me not also say there's no condemnation of anybody. But these are the realities that our young women are facing. And let me say they don't stop. I once was very surprised. As you get older, the interesting thing is that you still get a different kind of challenge as a woman. I think because you also get a time lag in your own career because of raising family. Most of us find that you're now not rising at the same parity as with the gentlemen. You get to your 40s, 45, 50, you start looking for these high positions, and I can tell you there's a lot of lobbying and knowing people. There's a boys' club. It does come to play. So again, it gets very, 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 very difficult for our women in all spheres, now not just engineering, to rise to the top. It is a real barrier, it is a fact. And I think it is this, and that's why I think it's very important we have networking opportunities. And this is the good networking. You go and you're probably in a society where you're the one who's organizing for a talk by a principal secretary. So now sasa umeingia huko, not through the official line. And that is the journey I took. When I reached, what I realized was I'm getting to the top of my career as a general manager. I realized, I think even before then, when I joined the women's chapter, I didn't know what the opportunities were. But with time, you're given that challenge that we want to organize a talk for, and we ask you to go to this office. And I realized this is quite good. You get opportunities to meet people that you really would not meet in your normal other official life. And since you also are not a club-based person, you don't have that networking. So this really, really helps. And I keep encouraging our young women, please join societies, professional societies. Give your time. What returns is not money, but get opportunities to even discuss your barriers, to even network, and possibly also hear where the opportunities that are coming up.
Yeah, I think there are a number of good points you've put there. So the barriers don't stop at, let's say, when you're raising a family. Even when you go higher up, there are different set of barriers that you face. And you really need to know how to navigate them. Maybe not through the so-called official ways, but you need to find ways to navigate them.
Broaden yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. And you also talked about, if you don't see somebody in that space, like for women, you don't know that you can achieve that. So maybe let's talk about education. We've come up with the CBC, the STEM pathway, and the other pathway.
Yes.
What are some of the ways that we can also encourage the young girls to see that, okay, I can see myself in the STEM path, and people like you have already blazed the trail, and now just encourage them to take up that path, and maths and physics are not necessarily hard?
Yes, I think it comes back, I think culturally, I'm a child of the 70s, so obviously there was a lot more cultural barriers then. To me, honestly, I think we also need to agree that today we are in a digital age. Most of you can access information. Your generation, we have no barriers. To be honest, barriers now are remaining in your own head, because you're able to also see beyond. We could even TV was a privilege in my time. So how do you even start to see a subway in operation? What I'm trying to say is that today's world, there are still cultural barriers, but they are much less. We have a higher educated stock. In Kenya, we have, I think, well over 4 million people who have gone to university. I'm praying that we are all role models in our home. It starts with us. In our homes, we must tell both our girls and our boys, you have no barrier, by the way. Prepare yourself for the world. Learn, read. When it comes to choices about what pathways you want to take informed choices. I think these days we have career guidance counselors in schools. Our day there was nothing like that. So there's self-initiative. And I'll go back to me when I was 7 years old. I made a choice that I didn't know what career I'm going into, but I wanted financial independence. It is something I pursued. Whatever I do, I just want to know I'll be financially independent. So even our young people, we need to tell them, when you say engineering is hard, I ask, as compared to what? As compared to you being in an environment where you are not growing economically. You're not also being creative. It's one of the easiest things you can be. Work hard in school, get your grades, come out and be an engineer. It's also a privilege. We are only 28,000 out of a population of 50 million. So we are certainly the top of our game. So I think when you look at it's the aspiration we should be selling to any child born in this country. Don't put barriers in yourself. don't. Even your circumstances can be very difficult. But if you can access information, you can access role models, I would like to encourage anybody not to tell themselves, I am born in a poor background, I am born black, I am born female, and give yourself barriers. Don't. There will be difficulty, or there will be what you need to take cognizance of what are the things that can be barriers to you. Prepare yourself, and you will overcome all these barriers. So for me, even the pathway of choosing STEM or choosing arts, it is your God-given talent. And let me tell you the final best part of all of this. Always look at where is the economy? Where is the big spend? Try to be where the big spend is. In Kenya, what is it? It is health. It is infrastructure. So health, doctor, that's why they don't go Sanjo. Engineers, because of infrastructure. Then we have entertainment. So make your choices based on your God-given talents, and have the confidence and move into the spaces that you need to, and get the help that you need, either from your mom, if it's not your mom or dad, your neighbors. It's who you admire out there. And I don't say you're admiring only people in Kenya. Look in the internet, you will get all the inspiration that you need to be who you need to be. I think that's what I would want to sell, that we have always dreams and they're valid. Let's pursue them.
Yeah, I like that. And there are two things I've picked from that conversation. Look at where the big spend is. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But you said at the age of 7, you wanted financial independence.
Yes.
At such a tender age, you were thinking about financial. What was the motivation there?
I'll tell you, there are two things. Actually, there's only one really. My late father, he wanted to pursue engineering, and he had this, what are they, the set squares. I just got curious about it. I wasn't really thinking about being an engineer, but it's at the back of my mind. Then I started comparing. Sometimes you're a child of the late 60s and early 70s, and you would see, culturally, of course, now my dad is the breadwinner. His job just looked more exciting. He was an economist. I can see he's a provider. And I thought he's making autonomous choices about his life. In fact, he influences all our other lives. Because of? What else? Between my mom and him, my mom is looking after us very well. She's doing the life-work balance. She's also working, coming home. But I can tell clearly when we have to make major decisions, who is making the decisions. That made me see I want to move, and therefore I think that's the first barrier. And I realized, okay, I'm a girl, but here clearly I have to make a choice that in terms of gender will not limit me, and I want to make the best choices for myself and my family, and to be able to support them myself, because I'll have that autonomy about decision making. And I thought financial, or call it economic, is a big one that we never talk about. We are always selling, especially to our young girls, romantic stories. You're going to just be beautiful, somebody gonna find you beautiful, and you're going to fulfill this life. It's good. But is that all? Is that all to aspire to just be a wife? And it's good. There's nothing wrong. But does that limit you? Should you choose to depend quite wholly on other people and their choices? You have to live with their choices. So for me, it was from 7 years. So nilisoma sana. I did not take school for granted. I knew this is my ticket, and maybe things have changed. I don't say it's not just about the A grades anymore. It's about fulfilling all your other talents. It's no longer enough to say I'm doing engineering. So I love my space. Now I'm in regulation. I talk about how is it we are able to have mobility of our Kenyans to go and do dignified jobs. We need to do dignified jobs. Why is Africa suffering that today we are always the poorest continent, and it has remained for 400 years? These are the questions in my mind. And so I always think that's a talent, or that is probably an area that I never explored. I was more to the structured calculations. That one I was doing very well. I was an obedient student, but I think these are areas now I look at and I say, if I was looking at myself holistically today, I would have developed that part of myself, that leadership and that, what did you call it? developmental, the developmental agenda for Africa in a very more intentional and deliberate way, not waiting for others to decide the budgets are this and we are going to do it this way, but we ourselves also saying, can we aspire as a Kenyans that we are now going to move our country, as the president has said, we want to move to Singapore. What are the practical steps to do that? And how do we keep encouraging our people? Because for me, this poverty is biting and it is irritating and it is wrong. Everybody has dignity as they are born. So why do we have people starving within our borders? And somehow it's not a conversation we're having even in our schools. We're only talking about mathematics, hard mathematics.
So yeah. Yes,
I don't know that.
I got that. Very interesting points there. And as you say, 30 years in this industry, and you said you are very focused, you had your good grades and so on and so forth. In those 3 decades that you've been in this space, from private sector to public sector, regulatory spaces, what have been your highlights? You'd say these have been wins in your career.
Oh, thank you. And I'll start with the recent wins. At Engineers Board of Kenya, I was very privileged. I came in as a CEO. It's an exciting job. And you now start interacting with board. So the first thing is visioning. And I think I had a very, very forward-looking board that gave me all the support. So we came up with 4 pillars. We said the first thing we want to have 10,000 engineers on our register. And we're on that journey. Today we're at about, I think by the time we close this financial year, we'll be at 5,000, up from 2,500. So we've doubled the numbers, and we're expecting to still double the numbers in the next 3 years. And this is going to unleash a power into our economy. I can tell you, engineers really do the everyday life that we're living. You came in and you said, oh, there was no power. We had been switched off. And a lot of other things started going wrong. So power, water, transport, how we got here today, all that is engineering. And I think this is what we've seen, to me, the China model. They have relied on engineering capability to leapfrog their country, to lift 800 million people from poverty in the last 40 years. So that is one. Then I come to education, engineering education, because everything is about education, by the way. And I think when I came in, we were at 40% of the engineering programs were accredited through creativity and talking with our stakeholders, because the law was not fully on our. We couldn't use the law as it was. It had a barrier. We managed to convince all the universities in this country, and today we're at 98%. So there's no engineering student who is being taught in the university today who would come and seek registration from the board and be denied. The last program that we are looking at has already submitted their program, so we expect to have 100%. Now what we're also trying to do is we also want to have 100% accreditation at international standard, so that a Kenyan graduate doesn't have any barrier that I only have to work in Kenya. If the skills are needed in Europe, in US, in the rest of Africa, we have that mobility. So to me, these are some of the things I look at, and I have a lot of satisfaction that indeed I have made a difference. I know, and maybe you're going to take me there is one area that, of course, you cannot, there are wins and there are also some places there are still barriers. We'll talk about the compliance level because of buildings that have been collapsing.
Yes, thank you for preempting my question, because as you said, as much as there are wins, there are also some challenges, and you've already preempted that question. I was going to go to the issue of buildings. In the recent months, we've been having buildings collapsing. We wonder what went wrong and at what stage. We have the issue of sick buildings. So as much as we have many buildings coming up, many of them are sick. They are not conducive for living and so on and so forth. So what are some of those challenges?
I think it's one, there's a multiplicity of players. You see, like the things I've talked about, the accreditation of engineering programs, the registration of our graduates, getting them the right, that is more or less an area we are almost fully able to manage. But when it comes to buildings, you have a private developer. And have you noticed, we are not talking of bridges collapsing. Telecommunication systems coming down left, right, and center. They are largely driven by the public entities. So those have inbuilt engineering capabilities to be able to carry out that work safely and in a sustainable manner. So that means you find the KERAs, KURAs, the KPLCs, they have the stock of engineers that they need to drive their infrastructure. When we come to the private sector, you need somebody to have a motivation. I have some money and I want to put up a building. So the first thing we've noticed is that a number of developers, because they have this notion that engineers and architects are expensive, they do not engage them. Let me now talk to the developers. That is a very huge mistake. That is actually where you'll even miss out on value engineering. Because you're calling it expensive, but you'll end up getting somebody who doesn't have the qualifications and will be giving you exaggerated designs. So you're still going to spend it. Only you're going to spend it in terms of the cement and the rebars. So that is mistake number one. What others do, they will engage the engineer and the architects. But they will only do it for purposes of approvals at county government or for getting the construction permit at the NCA. This is actually most of the buildings we have seen. When we look at the professional input at the time of construction phase, the engineers and the architects have not been hired. They submitted the drawings, they got approval, and got paid either to that stage or even somebody just went quiet on them. So this is a barrier we have seen, and what we have been working, we have an MOU between ourselves, National Construction Authority, and the Board of Architects and Quantity Surveyors. And we are working in a multi-stakeholder engagements so that we can, the full value chain, we make sure everything goes right. And I think we have done a lot of investigations, and mostly for us what we found, most of the buildings that have come down, they have not had enough the engineering input. The engineer said they only did their, they were contracted at the stage of up to the construction permit. Then after that, the developer went quiet on them. I must say as well, it's not just good to blame the developers or the county governments, where they do have challenges, they don't have the technical capacity. I can't also blame the engineers board fully. I must also say our engineers, we know that we have suspended 3 at one point because of unethical practices, where you have actually taken up a job, but you're not going to supervise it. We also have engineers who are getting jobs and they are not getting fully well-written contracts. You keep yourself, it's like keeping a back door that Kikiumana, I just disown. So we've also seen a number now have started writing to us and saying, I am not involved in this building. Do you know? I was not involved. I was only involved up to this stage. So there's still a gap. Even our own engineers, we're asking, please, let's be ethical. Let us protect the public. It is very unfortunate when a young breadwinner goes to site looking for his honest pay, only to get a building collapse and he dies in it. To me, it's a tragedy that we have trained our engineers and they're not able to give that safeguard to the public. Again, the same thing with the sick buildings, like you're saying. I think we've seen a few cases today about also the development. I think the county governments are supposed to come up with development plans, which they have lagged behind. So there's also a policy gap around there. They need to come up with these plans which are clear, so that even when you're treating up these new emerging mushrooming areas, we follow the right rules. We can't have a building put up and it has no ventilation, or another person comes to a building that is a few inches from, and that's what we are seeing. And you ask yourself, we have a building code, and we are actually not respecting the building code. And somehow those buildings have passed through our county governments and got an approval. So let's also not forget away from something, I'll put it politely, called governance. That is weak governance. The laws are there. The laws are there. But it is us players who are not following the rules. We've heard of illicit funding, money coming into this sector. Where does most of it end up? In the building space. So you put up your buildings na haraka haraka, you don't want to follow the rules, and we get into these problems. So I think it's also a conversation, a national conversation. We must start doing things right. and we used to do things right. When we got to the point where we say, I want to put up a 10-story building, and then change and say I'm going to do, no, let's do it to 14 stories. and you're not going back to redesign this building and it collapses on you. I also say, since our developers are also rational human beings, maybe we also can't blame them 100%. Maybe they're also being, their demands were our own public offices that are heavy on them. And so they run away from the right rules and say it's easier to bribe somebody on the ground than to follow the right rules. So I think it's an internal issue as well that we have to look and say, why are Kenyans not following the laid down rules that they are? Because they are laid down rules, but we don't follow them. Impunity. But there's hope, I must say. We are doing investigations. I know we've seen also the county governments have now moved in. And I think also Kenyans, let me call on us. We must be also civic awareness. What are our rights? Don't let somebody come up and put a building next to your residential area, and you can see clearly their issues. There are issues. If you say this is the design engineer, can you look at that board and clearly go to the website and confirm this person is on our register? That's how we will remove quacks. Yeah, that's why what is the purpose of the boards? Where they have a purpose. We are supposed to read and see who is the contractor. Is this person licensed by NCA? Who is the engineer? Who is the quantity surveyor? Who is the architects on the job? Isn't it?
True.
What kind of development is supposed to come up? You should also ask yourself, is this area zoned for a 25-story build, 25 stories? So let's also be proactive. They are saying Kenyans tumesoma. So we have 100% transition in primary to secondary or whatever. So let's not look helpless. We can engage ourselves in the right things to be done.
Okay. So now before we go to the quick fire section, I'd like us to go back to a topic we had mentioned briefly on that issue of balancing, as a woman in the engineering field. You talked about those first 2 to 3 years being critical, being on the site, or you fall off. What was your own personal experience? How were you able to navigate that between ensuring that you get the practical experience and also balancing your personal life? What tips would you give for young women who are coming into this space and are trying to navigate that balance or integration?
Yes. Let me start. I think my path has been a bit unique. I actually got married very mature. I was 33 years. And in those days, it was very old. Everybody had thought, will this one really get married? So those early challenges, I saw them with my friends. There you are, bringing up young family. Salaries is low. And I think what I saw was a lot of resilience being built in those, my friends. And all of them actually succeeded in their career. But of course, it took a 10-year break, looking after their young children, with little salary, living in the, even the outskirts of Nairobi, and made it. For myself, by the time I was, and now you also, you're answering, be socially aware. So you can see what is going on. This person is having to make choices, not to go for promotions, not to go out of the country, to look after the young ones. Normally, by the time they are 10 years or so, we start to relax and you start to learn yourself and you go back into and immerse yourself in job. And we've seen that the acceleration rate, even for those women who took their first 10 years, did happen. But it meant I also saw a number of our, especially women engineers, and we were colleagues, those who started their families earlier, also got registered slightly later. Because of that choice, that I've got a family and I've got to focus on it. For those of us who, I think I did my pathway for professional development, finished by the time I was getting married. The one choice I made, and I have continued to feel good about, is you must also tell yourself you need, the balancing comes from, it's about time. It's time allocation. So yes, you'll give your children full love, you'll give them, and also you'll also give them, you see, finances, I talked about it. It's very important because you're able not to also help with their education, with everything. You're a partner with your husband, bringing up a family together, making choices together. I made a very serious choice about house help. And I always kept 2. We were telling me it's expensive. I said, compared to what? I have 2 because I would have a backup. So I never came to an office on one day, any day, and told my bosses that I can't come to work today, my house girl. That was never my language. And I also paid them very well. I paid them fairly good and they stayed. My 2 house girls stayed with me, one until the first one, till my daughter was 16 years. And the second one came when my daughter was 2 weeks, and she stayed with me today, and my daughter is 21 years.
Wow.
So I'm also excellent in another field, home management. I do not joke about that support. We talk about support. We talk about support from our family, support from our spouse. Support system, build your own support system. At home is where it starts and ends. If your child is constantly going to get sick because you have a house girl who's not either cleaning well, you have a problem. You have to make a choice. Do I then leave work and come and stay at home to do this work? Or can I delegate fully and empower that person? My house girl is very empowered. Actually, I'm sorry for using the word house girl. Today's, I think, is not a good word. We'll talk of house help. Let me read it. You'll be able to return that. I have empowered her to the sense that she's actually my business partner. She'll bank for me. She's the one who does the what is it called? The vegetable shopping. She gives me the budget, and we agree. So it works very well for me, and I would encourage, whenever I hear issues of a young lady or anybody who's one, they tell me I'm troubled even in my marriage. First thing is, do you have a job? I tell you because your freedoms start with economic freedoms. Number 2, I ask them, and how is your house situation? Who looks after things and washes for you? It's a deliberate choice. It's not that we're avoiding to do these domestic things. But the fact of the matter, if you've got you've been trained and you're able to use your intellect at a higher level, don't use your tools because they're all available to you. Your time is 24 hours regardless. So please make sure, and that is one thing I keep telling, if you want to succeed, your home front must have succeeded or must have the base that you need. So you make sure you will go for the parents' days. You make sure you'll help with the homework here and there, but make sure that you're not dealing with mundane issues that are now becoming, do I stay later for 1 hour at the office, or do I start rushing home because I have the so-called day bags? Sasa unakuwa na day bag na wewe uko na full-time job. So you can't you're running 2 jobs when really, even if you have to run 2 jobs, maybe you need to make the choices about which are the 2 jobs. You could be daytime, you're an engineer, jioni, you're a singer. Because it pleases you. But please, when you make some choices, they will, and you know what? These things don't come up immediately. It's not that immediately things start to work against you. It's progressive over time. It is where you've invested your time. If you need to go back and do your master's, for me, I delayed, maybe again on life balance. I realized with time, the instruments were being written, you must have a master's. You have to see the signs. So I knew I have to go back to school. And I went back when my children were, I think the youngest was 5 years. It's a deliberate choice I also made. And I went back, and I think I did it now in the 3 years blast, for 5 until now she was 8 years. And of course, she's also starting to go to primary school. It's not that easy. And she'd not see me quite a number of the evenings. But these are also deliberate choices. And let's not cheat. Somebody was telling me, we always say, in the olden days, in the traditional days, but they say, African women have always been very entrepreneurial. They have always worked. Our grandmothers worked. They were traders. So when we start giving ourselves, it's a model that is not African. The model of one person works and brings everything home. I don't think it's quite African. And so let me also now appeal to a gentleman. Empower your women. Kama hajasoma, wacha arudi shule. She gets a higher level job. Because all these things come and impact on the children you're also building. And that is the future we are building. Yeah.
I think those are very powerful points. Yeah. Okay. So let's go to a quick fire round. Yes. And I want us to start with the area of financial empowerment, because you're very big on that.
Yes.
What does financial empowerment look like for you? What is a financially free person?
I'm not financially free, and I want to admit, an employee. I have been a full-time employee. I don't have a side hustles. So I am not a financially free person. A financially free person, the ones we see, are the people who have enterprises that are working for them and they have passive income. So these developers I was talking about, who have like 4 or 5 flats around in an area like Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa. Those ones are financially free. I am not financially free in that sense. I will keep looking for my whatever I need to do. And I have also no fear because I am ready to provide value. I know you have to sell a talent. You have to sell something. You have to sell your time. You have to sell your talent to get a return. If you are not able to say, I have 5 or 6 buildings out there. So for me, what is most important is the choices you make with whatever money you receive. And also, how much do you, what is enough? What is enough? Because many people also are chasing things that are vanity. I think for me, it is, of course, you want a home that is secure, in a secure space. I am a middle class. I am very middle class, and I am very comfortable there. And that I'm able to meet my obligations by the end of the month. And I'm also able to support even society. I have 2 children who have adopted from a house help of mine who passed on, and I took that. And now one is in, I think, 2nd year university, and the son and the daughter is in, she's now in Form 4. And I will, because I'm also empowering and finishing that dream for my own house help that she couldn't finish. So you also have to extend yourself. So somebody told me, don't be selfish enough. If I was to look for what I need for myself, it's maybe 3 meals a day, a comfortable bed to sleep in. It would be little things. It couldn't be. But why do we extend ourselves? Because we belong to society and communities. So if you can build an enterprise, do it. You don't do it because of yourself and your vanity and to be called an MD, but you're supporting society. So I think the mistake many of us make is you're chasing too much. You want to wear designer clothes. Me, I'm not there. I want to be smart enough, but I know if every day I'm able to take care of those, asema asante Mungu, and then I reflect back, I've never not eaten one day in my life. And then I know I live in a country where there are people who are not eating 3 square meals a day. So the biggest dream for me is how do we translate that nobody within our borders dies of lack of food or lack of medicine. Those are basics that I don't suffer. And I know as long as I have my strength, I will be able to cater for that for myself. But we don't do it only for ourselves. We look at our generations, we look at our communities, and that's why we extend ourselves. And when we come here to do policies for engineers, we are looking at from a country level, the strategy level, how do we lift ourselves out? Eventually, because I have worked for all these years, thank God, I also have a pension. So I thank God, because I know there are many Kenyans who also don't have that privilege. So that's why I also, every time I walk on the streets and you see a very old hawker, you feel a lot of pain. Because this person has given their youth, their time, they've raised a family, but they're still out here trying to make just a meal. So that's why we'll talk about policy. The most important is policy. This affordable housing, can it help our people to avoid these diseases that we don't need, them choleras and what have you? Can it actually translate into better lives for our people? So us in government, I think, are supposed to look at what are the aspirations. The aspirations are given by our leaders, of course, our political leaders. But we in government must also see how then we come up with policies and strategies to meet the aspirations of our people and give them dignified lives. Yeah. So pesa is not, I think chasing money for itself is not good. Look for fulfillment in many, many different ways. And I think I'm comfortable to be a middle class.
Oh, nice. And I think what you've said has spoken a little bit into what your legacy is. But what would you want your legacy to be? As Margaret.
Somebody says you never know what your legacy is. I think that was Mayor. What is the one?
Angelo.
Yes. When I think she was telling somebody was also saying about her legacy. She said, I don't know what my legacy is going to be. I mean, it's going to be defined by the others. But let me tell you, your legacy is also lived. I think in Kikuyu there's a saying, you bury yourself while alive. Every day, I do a service. And you'll do from big to small. Sometimes somebody just needs their license. They are going for a tender. And when they tell me thank you, sinasikia mzuri, huyo mtu sasa amesikia kumbe niko na registrar hapa, kuna mtu ananaangalia and who is looking at the interest. So for me, I think the issue is I would wish to be seen as somebody who I loved deeply. I also did what was expected of me. Let me say this. I want to be service oriented. Can I be supportive? Can I be helpful in whichever space? I don't want to be mtu wale watu wanaleta trouble and lack of peace. I'm a peacemaker. And I am always wanting, I have a big dream for Kenya myself. My own dream for Kenya is that Kenyans can succeed. And when we succeed, I believe we'll also succeed as a what? As a world. It will be a better world where we are not the dumping ground for things. We are not the people who have high unemployment for our youth. So that to me is what I do in my little space. You can't do it you do it in the space you're given. If you're given the space at Engineers Board, I had a huge dream. The first one was, we'll just collapse of buildings are going to end within a year. I realize it's complex, but I'm still very hopeful that we will get there, and that I also will feel good at the end of my life, because let me say another legacy is my children. As I talk about love, when you really just give love and it comes back in different ways, and you see, this is the work that you have also worked, and you've worked on, you've educated them. They are very independent, my daughters. So you can imagine me at 7 years, now what I've translated into them. And what I translated, by the way, my own mother also really wanted me to be independent. My own mother also would tell me their own pitfalls. For them, I think they had very many barriers as working women. Yeah, they really had many barriers. So she was happy. And she saw me succeed. She felt this is her life's work, which she herself hakumaliza. So it's the same for me. I'm passing a mantle. Be independent. Be good. The bottom line is be good. And everything else follows. And be ready to add value. Because if you wake up in the morning and you don't know what you're going to do, uko shida. So even those people who don't have jobs, volunteer, my friend. And then you volunteer. Usikae kwa nyumba if you have eaten. The issue is if you've eaten. So I don't know what my legacy will be, but I'm comfortable that I have done what I could to make life better for the people who interact and who come to get services from me as an engineer, as a CEO at TBK, as a mother, as a wife, within the community. Yeah.
Awesome. And before I tell you to look at the camera and speak to young ladies, what do you do for leisure?
What do I do for leisure? By the way, I think I think you talked of work-life balance. And I must say that is an area I've not developed very, very well. I think mine is the mentorship area. I tend to relax in my house. And I tend to be on my phone, I like to look at messages, inspiring messages. I like to, I watch a lot of documentaries about development. And really this is mainly by my husband. My husband is very curious. So I'll tend to watch a lot of those kind of documentaries, but I tend to really relax and have a private space to myself over the weekends most of the time. Of course, I will attend to, and then I think I'm also big on family. So I tend to visit my larger family over the weekends. So that I think is more of me. I'm fairly private, I think, in my own view. And I think it's an area, I think, of development. I had started playing golf, but I dropped off somewhere along the line. So I have things too I need to pick up. And probably also being just physically fit. I ain't doing too well on that area. So I think there are areas to improve on. I will just being honest that mine is basically reading messages, watching documentaries, getting inspiration, and mainly what I would say is also these networks beyond now work. Like now I'm saying engineering networks. So I tend to be with the Federation of African Engineering Organizations today, and I try to provide a lot of voluntary time into the activities that we do there. I'm currently we have a registrars committee, Federation of African Engineering Organizations, and have been privileged to be the first chair of that committee. So there's also a lot of networking and even writing proposals which outside of my office time, which I tend to do. And it's just that dream that, this idea that Africa is always at the bottom of the human development indicators. It's a narrative which I ask myself, in my lifetime it will not change. So I think that's basically what I do. Not too much leisure time, but I think I've also, but I will get there.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice. Now, finally, I'd like you to look into this camera and speak to that young lady who is in engineering or any other field about how she can really overcome obstacles and barriers and really become the best version of herself and offer value and service.
So let me talk to the young lady. Firstly, I think we have a lot of hope in you. You are going to be what did you call it? A trailblazer in your own right. You're going to change the game. You're going to carry the aspirations of our Kenyan citizens, your parents, those who have gone before us. So I would ask you to just keep to your path, succeed in your field, be knowledgeable in your area, come for professional registration as an engineer, because that is the brand that you will sell. It is a competency brand that you end up selling. We are very few as it is. We are very few women engineers, but those of you who are currently chosen engineering, there are a lot of support networks out there for you. Try to join your societies. Try to join the Women Engineers chapter. We also have the one WIRE, the one Women in Real Estate. We have Women in Energy. There are many networks. Also the mainstream, not only about the ones focused on the women. There are many, many other networks that you should be able to join so that you can grow your career and please add the necessary value to the economy. I believe we have all it takes as Kenyans, as women, to succeed. These barriers notwithstanding, and I think the barriers are being lifted every day for you. So believe in yourself, and I think we're looking forward to you trailblazing. And if I was given a chance, there are many who admire, because you don't only admire those ahead of you. There are many I'm looking at. The young women engineers, they're doing amazing stuff. And they have won many international awards. So I think there should be no limitation in your mind. So we were told by one of our marathoners, the greatest marathoner, don't have limitations. Go for it, and you will succeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've heard it from Engineer Margaret Ogai. Stay on your path, offer value, and don't have limits in your mind, and you'll be able to achieve all that you look out to achieve. This has been She Means Business. I have been your host, Claire Munde. Until next time, have a good one.